There are spoilers in the video. Hello again, and welcome to my region tier list for Rain World Downpour. I made a region tier list before Downpour came out, which included all the base game regions, and now I'm making one with all the regions, including the ones that were added in Downpour. This will be a listing of my personal enjoyment of the regions, which means opinions. For example, even if one region is more or less objectively better designed than another one, I will always enjoy regions that promote smart pathfinding instead of brute combat skill. That's just the type of gamer that I am. So if you have some sort of paranormal activity to non-fact-based arguments, this is your warning. Also, since Downpour came out, the tier list has basically doubled in scale, so we'll be going a bit faster. We'll also not be listing the subregions independently, so exterior and subterranean are just one thing rather than being split into like filtration, depths, and main subterranean, or like leg, underhang, and wall. We're also not counting any of Saint's renamed base areas, only the fully new ones that are added in his campaign, like Silent Construct. Anyway, we have a notable amount of ground to cover, so let's just get this train a-rolling, starting off at shit tier, containing the worst region in the game. The most divisive pick of the list is all of Ind's areas. Man, Downpour really made choosing the bottom spot easy for me. Anyway, let's go up to F tier. The worst non-joke regions in the game. And first one, the one that is probably going to get me a lot of flack in the comments, is Garbage Wastes. Garbage Waste is probably one of the worst areas I've seen in this game. It's an absolute failure in terms of difficulty scaling and basic platforming design, period. It's kind of astounding that they managed to actually replace... Oh, wait, no, sorry, am I... This is the wrong B-roll. Hold on, wait, let me put in the right ones. There we go. Ha! I made you look silly for typing a preemptive comment, you loser. I'm talking about past Garbage Wastes here, the variant of the region that only appears in Artificer and Spearmaster's campaigns. This version of Garbage Wastes is filled with instant kill acid, some of the meanest creature spawns I've seen, and some of the roughest navigation in the game. Old Garbage Waste was mostly flat, but now they've put a giant fuck-off building right in the middle that's filled with some of the messiest platforming challenges in the entire game. No other region has this hard of platforming challenges alongside this level of fuck you spawns. Like, Sky Islands has hard platforming, but generally the creature spawns aren't this insane. It doesn't lead anywhere special for either of them, as the only unique thing that Garbage Waste leads to that isn't done by Industrial or Shaded is a pathway to drainage system, which is unnecessary for both of the Slugcats because Artificer hates water, and Spearmaster's Quest completely ignores Ascension. It's a mess, and I really doubt I'll find anyone arguing against this placement. Right, now that the worst area in the game is out of the way, it's time for the predictable one, the one that you expected to be down here. I may have spent several minutes ragging on it in the last video, but I'm here to do it again. Rubicon. Fucking blows ass, man. For those who don't know, Rubicon is the final region of the Saint campaign, and therefore the entire game, arguably. It's a mixture of all the other regions in the game, and the depths, forming a giant maze of voidy arenas filled with the deadliest fauna the game has to throw at you. You are given only Saint's Ascension powers and the Firebug Spears and bombs to deal with this, and man, it is just not fun. The input for the power sucks on keyboard, which is my only experience. You can't pay me to use a controller for this damn game. And the entire area feels really unnecessary. It's like a final fuck you to the players after completing an already very hard campaign. I know that some people like it or didn't have much trouble with it, but know that from my experience, this area is a drawn-out, overly difficult, downright unfair mess that puts a damper on what could be a really cool ending otherwise. And it makes me not want to play one of my favorite Slugcats, because I know that every playthrough has to end with the funky trek through fucking Pasta Land. The lore and aesthetics are at least cool, but the area's too big and too annoying to get through for me to just be able to enjoy that fact. So it gets right here at the bottom. Next up on the list is the one people are actually probably going to get mad at me about. Five Pebbles again. Yeah, for those of you who aren't aware, Five Pebbles was my least favorite base game region in the game in the last tier list, and yep, even after all your constructive and helpful comments telling me how wrong I am, I still maintain that opinion. The rest of the base game, for the most part, is well crafted and fun, but Five Pebbles shoves all the detailed and nuanced challenges of silly things like karma management, hunger management, time management, and even the damn detailed and unique movement and combat of the game out the window by giving you a place with no karma gates, a full karma restore at the top of that area. The area is full of free food, has no cycle timer, almost all of it is in complete zero gravity, and the only hostile fauna you'll find are daddy longlegs, which are generally not a good idea to fight and are much harder to avoid due to the fact that you're basically incapable of any form of micro movement. The aesthetics are still great though, but with Downpour they added in a bunch of other iterator areas very similar to this, one being a direct future version of this area. You'll see the other iterator can areas much higher on the list, but this one does it the worst. There's even less of an excuse for the dogshit traversal when seeing how other areas work with the same toolbox, but do it so much better. I'll get to talk more about how the other areas do it well when I finally cover them, but 5 Pebbles still retains his spot at the buttfuck bottom of the tier list. Anyway, finally graduating from the god-awful areas to the regular bad areas, we have Farm Arrays. Farm Arrays was one of the few base game regions in Downpour to get notable and obvious changes to its structure and gameplay, beyond just connecting it to fucking Pipeyard. Farm Arrays got a number of shortcuts and alternate paths on the way to Subterranean, which is good, you know. Everyone hates the deer, and they're one of my major gripes with the base game. The issue with these shortcuts is that they're impossible to actually utilize for everyone except Rivulet or a Slugcat with a lot of Bubbleweed. So Farm Arrays is mostly still the same old area in the end. Flat, boring, and seeming at times to try to be anti-fun. The deer still don't work, the platforming is still boring, and Hunter still starts in the second worst base game region in the game. The only real thing Downpour added to Farm Arrays was the ability to take other paths to Subterranean to skip it, which most certainly says something about the quality of the region. Next up, Shaded Citadel. Shaded has honestly fallen off harder for me. While you can avoid the main fuck you spider section, it still doesn't stop the rest of the area from being generally threatless and boring. You either walk through the upper half of it like nothing's there, because nothing is, or you get locked in spider jail forever. Additionally, we're now counting memory crypts as part of this region, and while the aesthetic is neat and the mural spurts are kind of cool, the gameplay is equally as boring as just walking through the top half of Shaded Citadel. It does get a few other variants, but none of them change the fact that the core gameplay is just a shitty Metal Gear level. Most of the time I see new players despising Shaded Citadel because of how dark it is, and that is absolutely a valid criticism, but now that I know where everything is, I find myself just bored to tears by this region. This and Garbage Waste serve a very similar purpose, but present Garbage Waste is literally just better in every way, as both a pathway to Shoreline and as a pathway to other points in the game. Next up, and the final region of D tier, Sky Islands. If you remember last region tier list, I ranked Sky Islands below Farm Arrays, and I honestly don't know what I was thinking. Farm Arrays is so much worse. So let me use this placement as a way to redeem it by maybe 20% at most. Downpour helped to expand the area and give alternate paths and actually make it at least a little bit more fun, but the area does quite literally contribute to half the bullshit rooms in Rubicon, so it's kind of hard to give it too much credit. Sky Islands is a region where the main threat could have been parkour, but they obviously didn't want to go that route, instead filling it to the brim with creature spawns. Not horribly difficult, just a lot of them. If you go into an expedition with Hunted on and get to Sky Islands, you will have a mosh pit within the minute. This overall makes the area feel kind of messy. The aesthetic is nice, but the overall experience of navigating it is still pretty shit, and most of the rooms, well, they don't require squids. I was wrong about that. I've learned. And they fixed the weird camera angles on this one. But it's still not very fun to move through. Finally, out of the areas I can honestly call a negative experience, we get to the middle of the pack areas. C tier, starting with Shoreline. Shoreline is probably the most mid area in the game. Honestly, even Outskirts has more going on. It's not for lack of trying, too. The area is plenty unique. It has a lot to offer. But in my eyes, if you weigh the negatives and positives together, they come out to an even 0, a net bonus of jack shit. The area has cool aesthetics, but they wear out their welcome fast. Cool creatures, but those creatures are rarely used well. It has moon, but that just means you have to go through the rest of Shoreline literally almost every single run. Shoreline is an area filled with water. Very few Slugcats like water. It's not water puzzles like drainage or submerged superstructure. It's just a lot of flat, fucking open water, occasionally with some shit in it. You have all these awesome creatures like Leviathans and Aquapedes, But because they have such an advantage in the water, they are either impossible to get by, or you have to wait for them to chase a butterfly, making getting past them either a waiting game with no skill involved, or just a you got lucky. So while it has all these cool mechanics, it's always just drab to get through. I don't mind the swimming system. I like it, as a matter of fact. Those other two areas with water will rank much higher. But the movement through Shoreline doesn't use the swimming system. It just has you hold right or left, and sometimes other buttons if a Vulture or Leviathan shows up. It's a boring region in the end, and really adds very little to any playthrough besides Moon. Next up, Subterranean. Hey look, we get to count all the Subterranean subregions in one today. Yippee! So ranking them, here you go, same as before. The main body of Subterranean is fun, but not exceedingly hard, and full of just all the shit at once. There's just so much shit. The Stowaway is a nice addition, but confession, I still haven't ever seen one. Even in my expeditions, the main issue with the main body of Subterranean is just that the actual challenge of the region is navigating around the absolute fuckload of spawns. Normally this wouldn't be a problem. There are other rooms that do it better, because half the fucking rooms are just flat with a train car in it, leading to very repetitive gameplay in terms of creature evasion. Either they're on the other side of the train car than you, or you gotta go to the other side of the train car. Filtration sucks, obviously. It's filtration systems. It's a maze full of annoying enemies that block off the tunnels. It got a new pathway in Downpour, but that just makes it even more confusing to traverse. Depths is still the same old depths, barely anything new, just a walk and sometimes jump until you have to press down for an extended period of time. Overall, a really cool ending to the game from a narrative sense, but the whole region is way too hit or miss for me. Sometimes I'm all for the void, and sometimes I'm dozing off in my chair holding the down arrow. Or S. Sometimes I'm going through Subterranean in 2 minutes, sometimes it takes me an hour. Filtration is never fun, though. Fuck you, Filtration. Next up, a region that might feel familiar if you look at the map. Pipe Yard. The reason why is because Pipe Yard is more or less just a bigger, better designed filtration systems. The reason why it's above Subterranean in that regard is due to the overall rest of the region. Whereas Subterranean struggles to maintain an interesting challenge with its spawns, Pipe Yard at least has some more rooms that you can juke creatures in interesting ways. The reason why it's not higher is because of the previous point. Filtration, even in a notably better form, will always be an ass design because of the nature of a dark maze level. Well, luckily only a bit of Pipe Yard properly rings true in the filtration comparison, but the problem is that the rest of it is just stitched together from other areas, namely gutter and industrial complex. The region does serve as a quick way to get from one side of the map to the other, though, as it connects Shoreline to Sky Islands and Industrial, as well as serving for a nice gate into filtration for the end of the game. The problem with Pipe Yard is that it's brutal as hell in that regard, so oftentimes you're just going to want to take the longer path with significantly less red centipedes. It's a nice addition, but probably the most mid-area added in Downpour. The final region of C tier is one of my favorite areas aesthetically, the Rot. The Rot is an area I find to be very similar in Shoreline to how its pros and cons interact. To start it off, I mentioned it a few seconds ago, the area is just fucking stunning. It's gorgeous. It's a corrupted 5 Pebbles that's been almost entirely consumed by the rot. Some rooms in this goddamn area knock my socks off. These two are notable examples. Like, look at that shit! But how well did they translate the 5 Pebbles gameplay experience into something more fun and playable? Well, not bad, but not great either. This area has problems. It's a super tough area where the only threats are Daddy Longlegs, Proto-Daddy Longlegs, and shock walls. Every other wall can mean death, and every tunnel could have a murder booger running around in it. This makes the whole area not very fun to navigate when half the screen can and will eat you. It reminds me of the Path of Pain from Hollow Knight, sorta. It gives the same sort of vibes as a really hard area where half the shit is off limits, and where you have to constantly watch your step or get gooped. Another issue with the area is that for all its difficulty, it is just fucking gargantuan. It's the maziest area in the game besides filtration. I got lost in this area so hard, and even with a map, I still get lost to this day. So what you end up with is a gorgeous area that is really hard to navigate and really hard to stay alive in. Also known as the perfect combination to get stuck in. Luckily, when you actually find a way out, it's pretty easy to get out due to the low karma requirements and the presence of 6 grains for a free karma refill. At the end of the day, this area is better than 5 Pebbles in every single way, and if you disagree, you're bad and probably being paid off by the CIA to silence me. Be gone, glowies. On to B tier, starting off with drainage system. I still believe that drainage system is a generally underrated area. Traveling through it is rarely a problem. The creature spawns aren't absurd, except for maybe the few rogue camping salamanders or the fucking centipede chamber. The entire region is one of the few good usages of water in this game. It went down a space or two because 2 of the campaigns have an objectively inferior version of it, where the water level constantly fluctuates. It's a necessary change for Artificer, who dies when she steps in a puddle, but it makes the entire region frustrating when normally it isn't really that. This region is similar to Shaded Citadel in that I think it gets hate because it's a noob trap. The fact that it's connected to outskirts means that new players often stumble into it and get damn near soft-locked. I was one of those, but it's okay. Open your eyes, explore the region, have fun with the breath puzzles, enjoy the aesthetics, you're safe now. The cum tunnel is probably the only genuinely shit part of the region, but it's only for like a 1 or 2 minute gameplay loop, and even then it's far from agonizing like some of the rooms in Rubicon, if you know what you're doing, that is. It's only really bullshit if you get followed by like 5 leeches or can't get to a shelter and drainage after you finish coming in through garbage wastes. Overall, I think most people should give this region a second chance. It gets a very bad rap. Next region, garbage wastes. Present garbage waste, that is. Garbage waste is the same as it always was. Very few changes were made. The entire region is a fun little playground with all sorts of creatures in it. The main good part of the region is how it handles scavs, as either a threat or a boon depending on how you play it. This does make the region rather rough to pin down though, and why it's a mid-tier pick in my opinion. The region can either lock you in jail with a billion angry scavengers, or it can be an easy trek with some welcome challenges to deal with along the way. It even uses Daddy Longlegs rather well. The main problem I have with this region is honestly none of that. It's the fact that most of the right side of the region is a dead zone, except for the shoreline pathway. The Scab Fortress is cool, but mostly worthless for almost everyone, as you don't really get much from it. That can't just be found in the various Scab treasuries around the map. Normally, I don't mind dead zones and regions. The entire right side of the rot has literally nothing in it, but for the most part, the Scab Fortress is a complete dead end rather than looping back into the rest of the region like most other dead zones do. It's not a huge issue, just looking for shit to talk about as we blaze through most of the regions that I've already spoken at length about. Next up, Outskirts. Outskirts is a region that is profoundly hard to talk about. God damn it. It's a good starting region, and it serves as a nice beginner's playground sort of area. The biggest problem I have is that it connects to essentially one region. It actually connects to 3, but one of them is drainage, as mentioned earlier, and the other is farmeries. Both of these regions are incredibly tough for a new player, so you usually will end up just rushing to Industrial Complex first, making this region essentially non-existent for most experienced players who will get through it in 2 cycles, or new players that have a map. This is a real shame, as the entire right side of Outskirts goes mostly unused, and could really connect to an area like Gutter or Citadel without too much game breakage in terms of progression. Those are just a few things I can think of to complain about. This region is lukewarm as hell, generally a positive experience and a nice vibe for the beginning of any basic run, but it becomes a bit of a nightmare on harder spawns because, for some reason, they'd spawned 2 red lizards here, but honestly, that's more fun than frustrating in my opinion. Alright, we're speeding through these. Final region of B tier, Looks to the Moon. The Spearmaster looks to the moon. I mean, this area is kind of weird because it's theoretically just 5 pebbles again, but it does a few important things better. 1. Moon's exterior is technically in the same region as her interior, which raises her score because the exterior fucks pretty hard. 2. Moon's gravity is constantly fluctuating because she's, dying. Moon also has better music though, so, fight me on that. Looks to the Moon's exterior is different from 5 pebbles in a lot of ways, but generally the lack of DLLs makes it significantly more fun. Its only downside is being short and having Spearmaster spawns, but that's generally okay. Once you get into Moon, it's breathtaking. The entire region has this palpable feeling of dread, like it's on borrowed time. It's constantly quaking and the music has the ticking of a clock in the background. It's fucking gorgeous, man. I have to give a specific shout out to this room right here. Fuck. Probably the biggest and emptiest room in any non-void based region, and it is huge. The emptiness and darkness of it make it feel like a section of deep space. But enough about the aesthetics. The actual gameplay is, it's pretty mid. Due to the shift in gravity, it actually is unique and a bit fun, as the puzzles require you to think rather than just jump towards it until you bounce off the shit in the right way. Generally one of my favorite regions aesthetically in the entire game, but it's held back by its identity as an iterator can area that still functions, because even limited zero gravity and lack of any challenge just completely makes it generally boring to traverse. Moving up to A tier, some of the properly incredible regions now. Starting off with Industrial Complex. Industrial is what I like to think of as the most Rain World area in the game, whereas Outskirts should probably hold that spot in my brain. When I think of generic Rain World gameplay, I think of Industrial. This might be because Industrial is my most traveled region. It connects to basically every spot that you'd ever need to go to in the mid-game, in base game that is, and is the first region most go to once they exit Outskirts. Each time I go to Industrial, I know exactly where I'm going and how I'm going to get there. I know which creatures spawn where and where they tend to hang out. This makes me partial to the region, but it also makes it hard to talk about in terms of ranking. I mean, how do you rank a ham sandwich? I hope that analogy made sense, because it's all I got. Industrial is a good region, but it's kind of boring and hard to talk about, even more so than Outskirts. It does almost everything right, but is held back by how little it offers in terms of aesthetics and as a unique experience from other factory levels like Chimney and Outskirts. Next up, Waterfront Facility. Oh shit! Another industrial complex. I kid, mostly. For those who don't know, Waterfront Facility is the past variant of Shoreline from before Moon collapsed. It's another factory level with some of the notable landmarks of Shoreline, but not much else. I rank it above Industrial because it's really cool how it connects to Moon, and the gameplay is so fucking slick in all regards that it makes the whole thing super fun. It's like a mixture between Garbage Waste and Industrial. It's relatively poorly distributed, only being in 2 Slugcat campaigns, but both of those Slugcats are ones that would have a lot of trouble with base Shoreline, so its presence is appreciated. The entire region is essentially a refining of Shoreline, with the same water-focused coastline ideas, but put to better use as a Rain World level. Large open bodies of water don't really work in Rain World unless you're Rivulet, so having all the good parts of Shoreline shoved into a level on par with Industrial is a no-brainer for a great idea. Additionally, Waterfront Facility has a sub-region called The Precipice, which is a way to connect 5 Pebbles and Moon much more directly. This serves as a way to get around going up Moon Struts, or going through Pebble's Leg, or through Shaded Citadel. It's just a great pathway. The whole area makes Spearmaster's campaign playable, period. And beyond just the gameplay, this region has some of the best music in the game. My second favorite threat theme and the presence of the cut track of The Coast. The whole thing is a great addition. I just wish it was present in more campaigns. Next up, Chimney Canopy. You may have noticed that Chimney Canopy jumped a spot or 2 from last list. Well, this is due to the fact that Chimney got a major upgrade in the form of the gutter. The gutter would normally be a pretty low tier area. It's a mixture between drainage and shoreline, and the whole thing is kind of boring. But the aesthetics are cool, and it means that Chimney has more variety to it, which is the main thing that it was lacking. Chimney generally looked the same in every room, and it got progressively harder to call it anything but bland visually. Gutter changed that up in a great way, as well as connecting it to drainage system, which allows you to completely ignore sky islands and farm arrays on the way to filtration systems. Chimney is still a great region without the gutter though. It's like a mixture between sky islands and industrial, but the presence of that extra variety really makes the region shine. Generally, Chimney is a great mid-game area, and one of the earliest true tests for a run, as the spawns, while not hard on their own, are in such high quantity that it can quickly get overwhelming if you stay in one spot too long. This challenge is something that Industrial doesn't have, and is why I rank Chimney Canopy so high. The final region of A tier is also the final base game region on this list. There are still 5 Downpour exclusive regions above this one. If that's not high praise for Downpour, I don't know what is. The region we're talking about here is the Exterior. What was originally 3 different regions in last list is now 1 full region. All those regions were mid-tier, or in the case of the wall, top tier, so this placement does just make sense. I've heard that a lot of people don't like Underhang, and I kind of get it, but I mean, not really. I think you're just casuals. The entire experience of the Exterior is, in my opinion, peak base game Rain World in terms of gameplay. It's a super challenging region with some of the best aesthetics the game has to offer, mixed in with the consistency of the gameplay quality, and the feeling only akin to scaling a mountain. The entire experience is a perfect representation of the rewarding difficulty that makes Rain World so addicting to play. The Leg is a dark and vertical climb. The Underhang is a tough but treacherous obstacle course where any slip could mean death. And the Wall is a breathtaking, arduous climb as you scale the last obstacle before meeting with 5 pebbles, ending in 2 of my favorite vistas in all of gaming. I know that some people don't find the challenges as rewarding as I do, and I understand that. Luckily, the most controversial part of it can be entirely skipped by going up Chimney Canopy. Woohoo! Either way, it's my opinion, and probably not a very controversial one, that the exterior is the best region in the base game. Now on to the Downpour specific stuff, and the God tier, S tier. Our first region in the top 5 is Submerged Superstructure. Let me clarify, this ranking is specifically for the experience of Submerged Superstructure when playing as Rivulet. I have yet to go there with any other Slugcats, and to be frank, I don't want to. Submerged Superstructure is the lower half of the flooded remains of Looks to the Moon's Can, and is thus one of the few truly water-based areas in Rainworld. And this one really fits the title it's been given. It's so flooded that the entire bottom half of the region is downright unreachable to all Slugcats but Rivulet. Luckily, the only Slugcat that truly needs to go here is Rivulet, and it is perfectly designed for them. The long tunnels are full of tons of creatures that you don't normally get to engage with, such as aquapedes, eel lizards, and leviathans. All these creatures are rarely ever properly dealt with because they have such a massive upper hand over you when underwater. But with Rivulet and his super swim ball, you can actually end up outpacing them, making them actually fun to deal with. This isn't all there is to the region, though. It has a whole upper portion of half-flooded rooms for other Slugcats to deal with that are presumably quite fun. Again, I haven't ever experienced them. It also introduces the giant jellyfish, which is my favorite creature in the game. I love them. The entire region's aesthetics are gorgeous too. The vents have that undersea cavern vibe, making you really feel like you're in a Rainworld ocean, and the heart of the facility is just breathtaking. It reminds me of Inside in how it handles such massive underwater machinery. The whole area is gorgeous, and what makes it better is how you can parallel certain rooms to their equivalent in the other Looks to the Moon area. A really solid region, and a perfect representation of what I personally wanted from Shoreline when I first entered it. Second A tier placement, Metropolis. I will fully admit, the mere concept of Metropolis alone had me hooting and hollering like a mad ape. It was one of my dreams in this game to explore the ancient city atop 5 pebbles. I mentioned it in a video in passing, but damn did they deliver. This area is gorgeous. That's something that you'll notice with every area up here. It's stunning to look at. The level of experience with the editor that is shown off here is on another level. Not to mention this area just has the best music in the game, period. If this area had good gameplay, it would be the best. But it puts itself at 4th because of some of the same reasons I mentioned in the last tier list video. This area is only accessible in Artificer's campaign, or with some expedition shenanigans where you spawn there, and thus it is filled to the brim with very angry monkeys. The actual regions you're blasting through are perfectly designed for Artificer's high mobility playstyle, but it's held down by the repetitive gameplay of ramming your head into the wall of scavenger bullshit over and over again until you finally get to the next shelter. The gameplay itself ends up just being lukewarm at most, and it bogs down what could be the best area in the game. But hey, let's end this on a positive note. Metropolis also has a sub-region, the House of Braids, a wonderful mixture between iterator machinery and ancient architecture that makes for a wonderful background for the final fight of the campaign. That mixed with the Echo makes this region super fun to explore as someone other than Artificer. Next up on the list, Outer Expanse. If we're talking about lore presence alone, Outer Expanse has revealed more pertinent information than anything else on this list. Outer Expanse entails the early parts of the jungle that lies outside the Iterator facility grounds. It tells us that Iterator facilities are like metal islands amidst an endless sea of muddy jungles. It also tells us where the Slugcats come from. As a region to play through, though, does Outer Expanse hold up? Yes. Outer Expanse is not only one of the prettiest regions in the game, it's also one of the more fun ones. Not only does the region have wonderful creature spawns that are paced perfectly to feel fair, but it also has one of the best senses of progression in the entire game. When you first enter the region, it's just dark scaffolds illuminated only by floodlights, but once you get past that, it moves to a gorgeous orange palace overtaken by foliage, to finally becoming a great jungle as the Slugcats near their home tree. Every one of these subregions has a palpable vibe that they play off of. My personal favorite is the middle one. That palace is just gorgeous, and tells us a lot about old ancient architecture, which I care about because I'm a nerd. There are a few new mechanics added as well, vines that we won't see again until the Saint campaign, special shelters with 2 entrances, and a whole host of new fauna like the yeeks and jungle leeches. The cherry on top of this already great region is that it becomes accessible to Survivor and Monk as well, giving 2 unique endings to the 2 most basic Slugcats, which is likely an attempt by the devs to give them a little love so they don't feel like a forgotten part of the game. But this area has even more under the hood if you look for it. For example, you can actually follow the path that leads both Survivor and Monk into Outskirts through the Facility Roots subregion, which allows us to see Pebbles and Moon's intake system. There's also a tree in the middle of Outer Expanse that lets you not only rest in a destroyed train car, but also see a full 3D render of 5 Pebbles can. It only shows up in this one room, and it's so phenomenally complicated and detailed that it just blows my mind. This area is nuts, and it adds so much just by existing. But there are still 2 regions that I think have it beat. S+ tier. We had to make sure it felt special, so we added the plus. That's how good these last 2 regions are. They deserve it. First up, and the region that will specify the best one by process of elimination, Silent Construct. So, do you remember earlier when I mentioned that the iterator can structure inherently held back a lot of areas? Well, this area achieves what the others couldn't through one simple thing, completely abandoning the gameplay limitations of iterator structure type regions. This area is the completely destroyed remains of 5 Pebbles superstructure, which has fallen on top of Shaded Citadel. The area appears in Saint. The main thing that holds back an iterator area are the gravity mechanics, and the fact that the only creatures that show up in them are Neuron Flies, Inspectors, and Rot. Silent Construct has consistent gravity, and some of the most diverse spawns I've seen in a region, period. This area has some incredible vibes to it as well. Metropolis only barely beats this out in terms of sheer visual splendor. I love the lonely vibes of this area. Even the Rot here has died, frozen into immobile circular blobs that dot the inside of the structure. You can see the remains of familiar rooms, and can even climb back up the half-broken remains of the leg. You can even meet 5 Pebbles, who is still kicking, arguably, in a near-comatose state, barely able to string together a sentence. I have nothing bad to say about this region. It's so close to number 1 that if I were using some sort of numeric scoring system, it'd probably be like a few hundredths off from the top spot. I find it funny how Shaded Citadel and 5 Pebbles, 2 of the worst areas in the base game, managed to fuse together into something much, much greater than the sum of its parts. This is one of the few regions where Saint is able to properly scale up and around it using the tongue. It even has long horizontal rooms to race across. This area is perfectly suited for the campaign that it's in, has some of the most compelling environmental storytelling in the game, and it's generally just a gorgeous area, period. It's basically perfect. Such a shame that the next area is actually perfect. The single best region in Rain World Downpour, in my opinion, is not far from our last entry, and is held in the same campaign. It goes by the name of Undergrowth. Undergrowth is the Saints version of drainage system, and it has been completely overgrown. It's the greenest area in the game, beating even the final jungle of Outer Expanse. It's a true verdant paradise, held within old sewer tunnels. It is gorgeous, barely underneath Metropolis in terms of pure appearance and vibes. I have no problems or gripes or complaints about this region. It is downright perfect for the campaign that it's in. Almost every single Saint region feels balanced around his ability to move with the tongue. But no region is more true in that fact than Undergrowth is. Almost every single room in this region has a long, flat ceiling that you can use to leap around off of, and the previously tight and restraining drainage system has opened up through the destruction, and it leads to some of the most interesting room layouts seen. It makes great use of monster kelps, pole plants, and dropwigs, all of which hide amongst the thick foliage to be actually threatening to someone who can even spot them from a glance. This area can be raced through, but also needs a degree of patience and planning so that you don't get ambushed and eaten. And that's just the upper half. The lower half gives way to a series of wide, dark tunnels. The cum tunnel is drained now. This area is filled with centipedes and spiders, but manages to be a million times more fun than its equivalent rooms and drainage systems due to the fact that it forgoes tight water puzzles for a quick scramble to avoid fast predators. But if a tightly designed and gorgeous region was all this area was, I wouldn't rank it this high. This is the only region in the entire game where every single pathway you could possibly take is not only viable but fun. There is not a single room in this area that I could genuinely call poorly designed without at least 5 or 6 asterisks. That's still not all, though. The near-perfect gameplay design is only half of the battle. The vibes of this place are immaculate. Besides just the jungles, the entire left side of the region has the best echo encounter in the game, period. If you come from below, you have to climb up a giant chasm filled with massive unseen-before mushrooms as you reach the top, where the echo speaks to you and tells you some of the most important dialogue for decrypting the themes of this story in the entire game. An ancient that doesn't like the culture of the ancients, and loves the beauty of the world despite its entrapment. It's a beautiful message, and the fact that it plays the best music in the game while saying it is only just a bonus. I love this area. I could explore it for hours. It's the only area in Rain Road where the joy of progress doesn't overcome the sadness of having to leave a really cool spot. Even Silent Construct makes me excited to see what's next. But I want to stay and explore every corner of Undergrowth. It truly is the perfect region, and it is almost impossible to convince me otherwise. Anyways, that's my region tier list. Took a lot longer than last time, eh? Yeah, there are so many regions now. God, it took me 2 weeks to write this fucking script. Well, it's done, and it's out, and I wasted time on this that could have been spent on flora and fauna, but hey, you know how it is. Man, I love writing books for YouTube. Well, enough complaining. I'll get back to work. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Oh yeah, also, I've gotten back into streaming again, so watch my Twitch for non-Rain World streams. Yeah, variety streaming.